Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Betting Pros podcast. I'm your host, Dan Harris. Find me on Twitter at DanHarris80. Week 1 is here. It is time to talk about our best bets. And with me to do that is a fellow investor, what I will say, in a Nick Sirianni Coach of the Year ticket. That's Sean Green, the co-founder of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network and co-host of the Sports Gambling Podcast. Find him at Twitter at Sean T. Green. That's S-E-A-N. Sean, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Thanks to be back on the show. And yes, I'm so glad you were all over the Nick Sirianni Coach of the Year prop as well, because everyone says, Sean, you're an Eagles fan. It's blind homerism. But then when I have plays that are pro-Eagles, which I am a blind homer at times, that people don't believe me. But you laid out the case very well, I think, in the chat or when we were going back and forth. Yep. When you're looking for Coach of the Year, first-year coaches really have an advantage because it's all about exceeding expectations, that narrative. Eagles are coming off a 4-win season. So if they can get to 9, 10, even 11 wins, Coach of the Year, and I think when I got down on it, it was 50-1. I think he may have dropped to like 35-1.
Oh, yeah. I think I was 35-1 when I took by the way, what we were talking about is we were both in an FSGA prop league where you basically draft prop bets, and that was my first one, and I did win it by a few dozen $1,000 last year. But yeah, we were talking about that. We both liked that bet, and Sean messaged me afterwards his actual ticket on that bet.
Yes.
So yes,
I didn't get it. You snaked me in the draft on it because I thought I'd be able to wait on it, and I was thinking it was just more of a homer angle. But the Eagles to win the division is like 5-1. If Nick Sirianni comes in and takes his team to win the NFC East, it just seems priced incorrectly there. And a lot of I think it's like 4 to the last 6 were rookie head coaches. So fun times on that one.
Yeah, you can definitely make a profit on Coach of the Year bets, which we will talk about on our separate new podcast. Sean and I will be launching Nick Sirianni Coach of the Year all day, every day. But for this one,
needs to get behind him.
Let's do it, man. At this point, though, we are actually going to be talking about Week 1, our 3 best bets of the weekend each. Now, what was funny is we did not talk about these before selecting them. And right before I said, Sean, we haven't talked this through. Do you want to maybe throw it out so we know whether or not we're going to double up? And my worry was confirmed that we both had one overlapping bet. So I will choose something different for it. I will let Sean explain. But it was my favorite bet of the weekend, Sean. So we'll go through that. And then we will just go through the remaining games just very quickly, whether we have a lean or feel on it, just in terms of the spread. Again, one of my picks is an over-under, so we can talk about that. But again, let me get some very quick housekeeping out of the way before we dive into it. First, the Betting Pros podcast is now going to be 3 times per week. On Monday, I'm going to record an episode with a guest talking about the lines, an early look at the next week's lines, and see whether or not we think there's any value that we could make now, what we expect the lines to do. On Wednesday is going to be our standing college football podcast with Joe Pisapia and Scott Bogman. You should have already heard that as well. That's going to be every Wednesday. And then Thursday, we are recording this Wednesday, but usually on Thursdays will be this podcast. I will have a rotating guest. Hopefully Sean will grace us with his appearance a couple more times, and we'll be breaking down each of our 3 best bets of the week. Second, we are doing a giveaway. It is a signed Tua Tagovailoa jersey. Entry is very simple. Just leave a review for the show on Apple Podcasts or CastBox, and then go to bettingpros.com/review. It's a different URL this time, bettingpros.com/review. That is it. It is very simple. Also, if you want to triple your entries, all you got to do is be subscribed to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/bettingpros. And also, if you are, that's good because we do a Sunday morning live stream over there from 11 to 12. Me and Matt Peralt breaking down the games. I will be giving out my favorite props, which I come up with because I do projections for every fantasy relevant player each and every week. So I find the most value there. Again, that's 11 to 12 Eastern at youtube.com/bettingpros. All right, I've talked a ton. Sean, let's get into it. Remember, we have consensus lines over at bettingpros.com. That's where I'll be looking. But obviously, they give you a lot of different books, so you can check out what you like, what you don't, which one is favorable. Sean, also, we have our app, by the way. Sorry, I want to mention that. Betting Pros app. It's awesome. You make picks right in the app. You see yourself on a leaderboard. You can, look at everybody and how everything is doing, the percentage of experts that are picking a bet. I'm done, Sean. Go. I'll stop talking, please. Your first pick, sir. What will it be? Your best bet?
Let's knock this one out of the way here. We were both on the Seattle Seahawks laying 2.5 at the Indianapolis Colts. Again, I went through the Carson Wentz saga last year, and now Carson Wentz on a new team. Didn't have much of a preseason, didn't have much of a training camp. Sure, he has the rapport with Frank Reich, but I think that foot injury was a big issue for him, and just not being able to connect with the receivers. T.Y. Hilton is out, and it's not just Wentz's injuries. Really, why I'm taking this, and normally I'm not a guy who likes to a non-conference road favorite danger spot. But I think the injuries surrounding the offensive line for the Colts are really going to be an issue. Quentin Nelson, all-pro. He didn't practice Wednesday. He's dealing with a back injury that's flared. He's been on the COVID list. He also had this similar foot injury that Carson Wentz had. Xavier Rhodes, he didn't practice as well. He's day-to-day with a calf injury. I think that's going to be a big issue, especially when you talk about guarding DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in this new Shane Waldron offense, which really could be an issue. And then lastly, left tackle. It's really, they very well could be down to their third string left tackle for the Colts. Anthony Costanzo retired. Eric Fisher seemed like the guy that was supposed to replace him. He's coming off an Achilles injury, a late Achilles injury. He was just on the COVID list. He's coming off the COVID list today. There's a chance he starts, but again, not much of a camp. I can't imagine he's in amazing shape. So I think they could be down to their third left tackle. And then I'm just high on the Seattle Seahawks and Russell Wilson. I mean, Russell Wilson, since 2012, 85, 69, and 6 against the spread. And he actually breaks that non-conference rule, 21, 15, and 2 against the spread. So it's a bet against these Colts injuries and a bet on Seattle.
So this line, I think, Sean, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think like when it originally opened up before, the Wentz injury or anything like that, I think the Colts were favored by 2.5 points. So it's gone big with the Wentz injury, which is fine. I don't understand this one. You're right. This was my number one as well. And I was talking to you about it, and maybe you can explain it. Do you have these lines sometimes? I do, certainly, where I look at it and I go, well, the public's got to be all over the Seahawks in this game. I imagine this seems like a spread where they are begging you to take the Seahawks. Does that ever make you nervous? Because I agree with everything you said. Given the injuries to the offensive line, given the Wentz is going to play, that's great. He's had like no time to get up to speed in this offense, or at least have chemistry with any of these receivers, which, by the way, T.Y. Hilton is out. Yeah. So it's Michael Pittman Jr., who I love, but no time to get up to speed in this under a field goal. Like, I don't know. Does it worry you ever when it feels like they're begging you to take a line?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think you kind of have to bring it back to what's your handicapping style. Mine is watch all the games, look at the numbers, and break it down from there. There's some people who just bet strictly, hey, whenever the public gets up to 80, 90%, that's when you take it. And there's certainly, yep. I do factor that in. But in this spot, this Seattle team is just too much to pass up. And again, the Colts, to me, I liked fading them on the win total just because they have such a hard, like, you look at their schedule, those first 5 games they have out of the gate, really brutal. And then you throw in the offensive line injury news, and that kind of centers around some of my other picks. I love fading a team with offensive line injury news because you're in the fantasy world when a star player or the quarterback goes down or is injured.
Oh, yeah.
That it's a lot of fantasy news. It's factored into the line. It's factored into the public betting. But one of the places where I still think there is some value is people that don't keep up with the O-line injury news and just assume like, they're throwing whoever out there in left tackle. But that's a huge difference. We saw Wentz last year dealing with the banged up line. I mean, he looked horrible even when he had time to throw, but the fact that the Eagles started 14 different offensive line combinations didn't help Carson Wentz last year. He doesn't have the mobility that he had like in his near MVP season of 2017. So I think that's really going to be a huge issue for him.
I couldn't agree with this more, really. And he's not good. He wasn't good under pressure last year. That it's not like the Seahawks have an amazing pass rush or anything like that, but they'll be enough to get after him given the state of that offensive line. Yeah, I don't get this one. And also, I mean, we haven't even talked, by the way, about the other side of the ball, right? Like, other than we love Russell Wilson and he's great, but the Colts have a very good defense, assuming even Xavier Rhodes is healthy. I mean, their secondary is fine. They match up fine here, except that there are 2 things. Number one, I think we're going to see, Sean, a repeat kind of what we saw last year with the Seahawks, which is they're going to let Russ cook early. Then they're going to lose a couple games. I've said this on the fantasy podcast. They're going to lose a few games. Their defense is going to be exhausted because somehow letting Russ cook. They had a couple of 3-and-outs. The defense got exhausted.
Pete Carroll gets scared.
We've seen Pete Carroll's 70 years old, dude. Like we know what Pete Carroll is at this point, right? He's going to be terrified. He's going to be like, all right, we got to run the ball. Got to control that clock. But for now, I do think they are going to let him cook. And the good thing is the Colts don't blitz a ton, 17% of the time last year. And Wilson just carves it up if he has time, man. He's great. I mean, he's always great. But when not, he had 108 passer rating last year when opposing defenses didn't blitz. So totally with you. This is our combined Betting Pros best bet of the week. We will go with the trap bet. And by the way, this is the only thing I will say about the public versus, pros sort of thing. Fading the public, Sean. And by the way, I haven't seen the split like right now. I'm just assuming this is going to be a public play, but I haven't seen necessarily the money that's coming in yet. But it's not always wrong, right? Like it's the books and they have like long-term sort of views, but any one game, like it's not like fading the public. It's like, well, if the public reaches this number, they lose. Sometimes they win, especially early on when I think books are still struggling with the models, right? So I'm really okay with this.
Definitely, and week one especially could be good for the public because there's or someone like myself who comes in with some opinions on the season, on the teams, and there's some value there for sure.
Yeah. So you're going to hate this next pick, okay? I'm going to lay it out here right now. My guess is you're going to be on the other side of this one, and you can be it. And we talked about being a homer, okay? Yes. Do you know the team I root for, Sean?
Yes,
Are you
the
aware?
Jets.
It's not been a pretty existence for me in multiple ways, but especially not in my football. I am going to take the Jets here, getting 5.5 on the road against the Panthers. Here's the deal. Sam Darnold revenge game. I totally get it. McCaffrey is back healthy. I get it. I like Terrace Marshall. I like the receivers. I get it. But you just mentioned something about offensive lines, which yes. I feel like you're right. The public is like, we don't really care. Does anybody out there understand that Carolina has one of the worst offensive lines in the league? And not only that, but then you're just like, oh, by the way, one of our better, I guess, offensive linemen. I don't know how you rank them. They're not very good. John Miller, oh, by the way, you're out with COVID. So They just lost another offensive lineman in what was already an offensive line that is barely hanging on by a thread. So I guess it's going to be Dennis Daly. I don't even know. It's going to be terrible. Now, it's not like the Jets have this amazing pass rush. If they had Carl Lawson, I'd be a lot better about it. Everybody's going to be on the Panthers on this one, and I completely understand why. But here's the thing about the Jets. I didn't know how to value Zach Wilson when he came on, bud. I was very, very hesitant. Okay, I don't dive deep into film in college football. I need to wait to see it here. I had a lot of people who loved him, a lot of people who didn't like him, but I've watched him closely in this preseason. I think I am just fully in on this, and it's scary. But watching him, a couple of things. Number one, the game speed does not look like too much for him. Okay, he's got good footwork. He's very poised. He knows how to kind of get it. What means something to me, and maybe this is dumb, maybe it's narrative, they just came out with the captains. He was voted a team captain by his teammates, okay? I think you had a very Johnny Manziel possibility here with Zach Wilson, just given sort of, his persona, his confidence, stuff like that. It might be there. But for me, I'm encouraged by what I see. I think he's going to have a big game here. They don't have tape on him. They don't know what to expect necessarily from what they're going to see. I think the defense is good enough, and I think Saleh can make up for the lack of talent that they necessarily have right now, especially without Lawson. So I don't know, man. I don't know if they're going to win, but I think this is a field goal game, so I'm going to go with it. I imagine, like most humans, you think I'm insane, but go ahead and make your case.
I was going back and forth on this one. What it came down to me is, do I feel comfortable laying 5.5 with Sam Darnold and no offensive line? And I just can't come to that. I'm with you. I'm also high on Zach Wilson. We had Joe Theismann on our podcast right around the draft, and he was super high on Zach Wilson. I ended up watching a bunch of BYU during the season, and I'm on board. I have Zach Wilson in best ball because I do think they're going to be in some spots where he can throw a bunch. And again, you bring in Robert Saleh for a reason, to get the most out of this defensive talent, and I think they're able to do that. I do like Carolina, this season in fantasy. I'm a big Robbie Anderson guy, And, having McCaffrey back will certainly help Darnold. But again, just watch Sam Darnold last year and then imagine this guy laying 5.5 points against any team. Like, can you really feel good about that? You can't.
Now, 5.5, again, the guy who co-hosted, Matt Perrell, hosts the Daily Juice podcast, he was always like, I don't know, man, between 4 and 5.5, that's like the dead zone. I feel like the books don't really know what to do with it. I don't know what to do with it, so I stay away. And I do get that. To me, though, yeah, it is in the realm of possibility that Robbie Anderson has a giant, monstrous game as he and Darnold stick it to the Jets, right? Like, it's totally fine, totally possible. But I don't know, dude. I think right now, without anybody really knowing what they're going to see from the Jets, with Elijah Moore getting healthy, Corey Davis has looked fantastic. I know the running backs aren't awesome or anything like that, but you do have enough depth there. Tevin Coleman is serviceable. Ty Johnson's looked fine. You've got Michael Carter. I don't know if P. Ryan's going to play, but the offensive system with LaFleur, I really do think, and again, the Jets back in the Rex Ryan days, they had a lot of talent on defense, obviously, but you can make up for not that much talent if you have a really good defensive coach, which I think Saleh is. So I think the Jets are going to come here. I think they're going to surprise some people. Again, I'm not predicting the win, although if I take a team under a touchdown, I don't know about you, Sean, I'll probably...
You got to put a little on that money line.
Got to do it.
And again, you predicting that people will be on the Panthers, I think, is the smart way to go. I would hang around. I don't think you have to bet this one early. I think there maybe is a chance you get it up to 6 points if you're just going to be taking the points. And one last point, I think the Jets are building their team the right way. Unlike you look at the Giants, who in the first round are drafting Kadarius Toney, Jets are putting investing draft capital in the offensive line. You got Mekhi Becton and Elijah Vera Tucker. That's the kind of foundation you want blocking, for a rookie quarterback like Zach Wilson. So, and I'm super high on Saleh as a coach.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting is the offensive line really didn't play that well this preseason, but I'm throwing it out. Like, Becton had a weird preseason. He just cleared concussion protocol, so he should be fine. But they have a lot of talent there. They did it the right way, which they didn't do for poor Sam Darnold. So they didn't invest anything offensively. I will say, it's funny, it might climb, but there are, I'm looking again at bettingpros.com consensus lines. The consensus line is 5.5. The overwhelming majority of books are at 5.5, but to the extent they're not, they're actually at 5. BetMGM, FanDuel, they're at 5. So I would wait. Now it's priced down a little bit. It's like minus 104 a little bit. On the money line, it's 190 right now, consensus for the Jets. So you can get 210 at like DraftKings and stuff like that, plus 190. So yeah, I'll be sprinkling on it, but good. All right, glad. I was almost certain everybody's going to be like, come on, you're a homer. And if people have listened to this podcast for the last couple of years, I never picked it. Like, I'm not somebody who picks the Jets. In week 1, with little tape, with some optimism that I'm allowing myself until it all gets smashed this week, I'm going to take them. Go to bet number 2. What do you got?
Okay, bet number 2, another non-conference game. This time I'm fading the road team, and I'm taking the home team. Give me the Tennessee Titans laying 3 points against the Arizona Cardinals. This to me is really based on the I like this as a fantasy game as well for Tannehill. If you're looking to put him in some stacks with Julio Jones and A.J. Brown, I think it's a good bet. Really, this is just a bet against this Cardinals secondary, which had issues before. Now you throw in the fact that they lost Darqueze Dennard, and then Malcolm Butler randomly retired. They're starting a cornerback, Byron Murphy, who hasn't played since 2018. These are the kind of teams I like to go against. I'm not a massive Kyler fan on the road. I think Vrabel is a better coach as well. I think they have an advantage there. And then Titans, you look at their non-conference record, 27-16 against the spread in non-conference home games. It's a bit of a travel situation here for the Cardinals as well. So Tennessee only being -3, I think is a really good spot. Hopefully they get a little bit of a pass rush with Bud Dupree, but I think this is just going to be them outscoring the Cardinals.
So it's interesting because I feel like for me, I don't know necessarily what to expect other than, I will say this, my second bet, I'll just throw it in here. This was not on my original board. This was a backup in case I knew that Sean was going to take that Seahawks bet, which I should have figured, was the fact that this is a high total. It's 52.5. I'm still going over. Yeah. I don't love it. Absolutely. Like, there's not something I'm going nuts. It's 51.5 right now as I'm looking at the consensus lines on BetMGM and Party Casino. That is something that I would be more likely to say. It's 52 at Fox Bet, 52 at PointsBet. But 52.5, that's at my book, DraftKings, and total. I'm still going over with it because, correct me if I'm wrong, like this is just going to be, I think it's going to be pretty much a shootout. Like I really do think, and I think in the best case scenario for Tennessee, they get off to a really hot start in the game because they're home. Fans, by the way, this is something like we're not discussing the fact that there are going to be fans at these games. Yes. And I think last year it was like, wow, all the scoring. That's because the opposing team would come into these stadiums and they could do whatever they want, right? They could audible at the line, no big crowds, no big deal. It doesn't matter. It led itself to offense. For this, I think generally speaking, might be a little bit of a lower scoring week than we usually expect, except this game, which I am just basically thinking like they are just going to go back and forth down the field. Neither defense is particularly good. Both offenses are absolutely explosive. But that's the one thing for me, Sean, that gives me hesitation. If I have to choose a side, I would take the Titans -3. But my worry just is like, are they going to be able to stop the Cardinals? Or do you just think like their offense essentially is just going to be so unstoppable that you're not even worried about it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, Titans do have injury concern as well. Again, that's why I did a lot of stacking in my Millie Maker lineup from this game, because the game script could be, like you said, the shootout. I'm with you on the total there as well going over. To me, ultimately, the non-conference aspect, the coaching advantage, and I think I'm more confident in Tannehill than Kyler Murray on the road. Mm-hmm. I know Kyler Murray's claiming he's not going to scramble as much this year. He doesn't want to get banged up.
Yeah, right.
He had a really good year last year in the first half, and then once he got banged up, not quite as good. If he's going to hold true to that and be a little hesitant to scramble, I think that benefits the Titans. And maybe that benefits the Cardinals long term in that he stays healthy longer. But I do think in the short term, if he's going to stay true to his word and not scramble as much, I want the Tennessee action all day.
Yeah, I look forward to him keeping his word for about half of the first quarter before, right? I mean, but I'm not criticizing the side either way. I do think that that's the right side if I'm going to go one way or the other. For me, it's much more about the fact that, like, what was the Tyson quote? Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Yep.
Right? Yeah. That's what I think. Murray's got a plan not to scramble and whatever, and that's going to be all well and good until they're down 17 points, right, in the middle of the second quarter. And then he's like, I got to make stuff happen and everything like that. So I think that might be a long-term thing, but I get it. But I do think I think this is going to be a shootout. Like, value-wise, Sean, like if it hits 53, if it hits 53.5, like I know people hear that, and people who aren't like really sophisticated bettors, they're like, what do you mean? Like you're like really excited, like you're picking the over on 52.5. You're excited about that. But if it goes up like half a point or a point, you're going to be a little off it. Yeah, that half a point or a point is monstrous every single time you bet. But for me, I'm with you that it's going to be high scoring. So I'm going with my second bet again for basically the reasons that you said, essentially over 52.5. So we can go back to you now for the third one, and then I'll finish mine out. I'll recap, then we'll just hit everything that we haven't hit yet.
Awesome. My third and final pick, give me the New England Patriots. Laying 3 against the Dolphins. Maybe I'm going to sound like a broken record, but again, there are serious, injury, COVID issues here for the Miami Dolphins. First off, Will Fuller is still serving that 1-game suspension. Now they just lost their left tackle, Austin Jackson. He's on the COVID list. Also, Adam Shaheen. I'm not a huge Tua backer. I have to see it from Tua before I'm really going to take him on the road in a division game. Tua last year, 2020, he was only 6.3 yards per attempt. And, New England won this game last year at home. But really, I think the New England defense is going to be revitalized. Of course, getting Donta Hightower back, Patrick Chung back from the opt-outs. And New England coming back to the offensive line quietly, one of the better offensive lines in the league. And, again, I think that's kind of why they went with Mac Jones. They felt confident giving McCorkle that's actually his real name is McCorkle. He shortened it to Mac. New England's offensive line, I think that's why, Belichick feels confident starting a rookie, is that he's going to be able to sit back there. They're going to give him easy looks. They're going to pound the rock with Damian Harrison and, even Stevenson getting involved in there. And Miami's defense, who eye test to me, I always kind of liked them last year, but then when I was doing my offseason stuff and really digging deep, they really benefited from a kind of unsustainable turnover differential. And you expect that to kind of regress back to something more reasonable. And you look at their yards per game, they were 22nd in yards per game last year. Their defense at 251 and a half. But really, the Miami rush defense on the road led up 132 yards per game. I think their Patriots are going to pound the rock and then set up some easy play action for Mac Jones, and they're going to get this W. So -3, I'm all in.
Yeah, so the total on this game, which is understandable, is one of the lowest totals on the board, if not the single lowest total, is 43.5. Okay, so this is going to be a low score. Oh, no, it's 42 at the Broncos Giants, which is more understandable, frankly. But 43.5 with our consensus line over here. So this strikes me as a close game that's going to be decided within a field goal, which is why I don't really love it either way. I mean, this is a rookie. A rookie was named the starter like a week ago, making his first start. I get that he's home against a team that was, again, you're right, they weren't as good as they played last year. Tua struggled a lot last year. They're down Will Fuller. I think we're going to see better. I think we're going to see a big jump here from Tua as he gets further away from the hip injury that's sort of limited last year, and just more comfortable with him understanding you got to throw into coverage sometimes to make it happen. So long term for the season, I am on Tua. I do think that the Pats defense, because I think people are like, well, Gilmore's up, blah, blah, but I think you're right. I think they're underrated at this point. But I don't know, man. I don't feel that confident. I don't think either side is the right side. This would be a total stay away for me. Well, but for me, I'm surprised you trust Mac Jones.
Well, I trust Mac Jones because he's not – I mean, this guy has played in some big games in Alabama. Normally, a rookie making his debut in the NFL is going to be one of the biggest games he's ever played. Not for Mac Jones. And, you talk about the fan base getting back. It does seem like Bill Belichick is just itching to get some early W's to kind of counterbalance the narrative that Brady was really the guy and not him. He's just itching to do whatever it takes to get into the playoffs. And then the final, answer or final reason why I feel comfortable with it is Bill Belichick versus a former coach. Now, Flores, I think, is the outlier as far as Belichick disciples who I think are good coaches and have had success. But if this game was in Miami, I'd be all over the Dolphins because the Patriots usually struggle down there. But early in the season, at home, friendly crowd, and the Dolphins left tackle being out, don't sleep on this Patriots pass rush. I think they could get to Tua and really make things interesting for him.
All right. Well, I'm going to stay away. I'm going to watch it. I'll be rooting for you on the sidelines, as will my entire crazy Patriots-loving family. Okay, my final one, I'm going to a total here. Okay, I actually find the spreads, especially early on, man, I think the lines aren't that net. They're not as sharp, obviously, as they're going to be in a few weeks when the books start getting more and more data, of course. But I still find it really tough because I really feel uncertain about what we're going to see. I am going to a total, though. It's your team, good sir. It's your team. I don't know how I feel about the game and the spread, but I do like the total. I'm a little surprised that the Eagles and Falcons are only at 48. I mean, that's not a low total or anything like that, but I kind of thought it would be higher. I'm going over here with the consensus line at 48. There is a 48.5 out there at FanDuel, but 48 is the consensus. I think we kind of throw out what we saw last year from Hurts just generally as the quarterback. They've been able to design the offense around him throughout this entire offseason, all the rumors aside with Deshaun Watson. They've known, in my opinion, that Hurts is going to be the guy. They have better pass catchers with Devonta Smith. Zach Ertz is fully healthy. Rager has now looked good after all those rumors in the early part. The offensive line is obviously better. Hurts can scramble. That's going to extend drives and I think allow them to put up some points, especially if they fall behind, which I kind of expect them to. A little bit, Sean, like how I was thinking of the Titans and the Cardinals, where it's the Titans get out to a big lead. I just think Murray might just start running wild and create some plays and put up some points. I could see the same thing here with Hurts because, again, with the Falcons, I think they're not going to be a very good team. Their defense isn't very good. But I do think that even though Arthur Smith doesn't run and gun, I think what he does do a ton is play action. Tennessee was had the most play action percentage in their offense of any team last year. He's going to bring that to Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan that's just good for an offense anyway. It's going to make them more effective. But it's particularly good for Matt Ryan, who when he was with Shanahan, obviously a lot of motion, a lot of play action. He had his best year of his career. I expect him to actually be pretty solid. And again, I mentioned this earlier. Unders, I think, as a general matter, are the better bet in week one because I do think it's going to be a little crazy for these road teams to come on and be like, holy cow, fans are screaming at me. But I don't know, man. At 48, I think this is going to be a lot of points being put up here. So I'm going to take the over.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board. I'm usually not a massive total player, but when these week one lines came out and we immediately broke them down and kind of gave our instant reaction. This total opening up at this price was just, to me, comically low as a guy who follows the team. I mean, on the Eagles' offensive side of the ball, their O-line, all the starters are healthy. He's going to have plenty of time to throw. They're going to drop some simple, easy stuff for him. I think they're going to be able to move the ball against Atlanta. Now, flip it over to the other side. What do the Eagles struggle with? Well, they have a pretty decent defensive line, but really the back end is where there are the most questions. They have a new scheme coming in. Calvin Ridley, I am high on him. Fantasy, even week one. You know, Slay is like a solid cornerback one, but he struggled. We've seen Devontae Adams. We've seen DK Metcalf have big games against him. And lastly, we really struggled last year against the tight end. I mean, George Kittle had a massive game against us, and Kyle Pitts, you know, Rodney McLeod, one of the safeties, he's coming off a pretty rough injury, didn't have much of a preseason or a training camp. He should start. They brought over Anthony Harris, but again, it's new team, new defense. I could see them struggling. This, to me, just, again, has shootout written all over it. Yeah. And I think, you know, dark horse DFS play that I've just been crowbarring on every podcast is Quez Watkins at $3,000. If you're looking to put together a Millie Maker lineup in DraftKings, you could do worse than Quez Watkins. We saw him break one in the preseason with a screen pass to Joe Flacco. Hurts almost got him on a deep ball that he was open. They were just like a half second off. I think I can tell you this, for a guy that is priced at DraftKings at $3,000, I can guarantee you he gets like 6 targets. So I think he's going to be involved in the offense, has a chance to break it. And same with Miles Sanders. He didn't have an amazing year last year and certainly underperformed his round one drafting and probably annoyed a lot of fantasy owners. But he certainly has the ability to break open a big 75, 80-yard run. So I think there's huge potential for big plays on both sides of the ball. So I'm all over the over with you here.
Yeah, I'm not going to touch the side. We'll talk about that in 2 minutes about how you feel about the side. But yeah, there's going to be points here. I feel pretty confident in that. So that is one of my favorites. So let's just very quickly recap. I'll do it again at the very end of the podcast. We both love, the bet of the podcast, Sean, is Seattle laying 2.5 to the Colts.
Yes.
You also like the Titans laying 3 to the Cardinals and the Pats laying 3 to the Dolphins, right? Got that?
Yep.
That was what it was? Yes. Good. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss it.
I was double checking that I didn't mess up something, but yes.
No, I wanted to make sure. And all favorites for you. You're getting a little crazy there.
A little square Sean over here. I don't mind taking favorites, kind of under 3 to me is almost, when you're taking a favorite under 3 in the NFL, I'm not too worried about it. I do have some dogs I like that we're going to rattle through here on the card, but yeah,
wonderful.
Small favorites early on in the season, I'm on board.
All right, so my 3 best bets are, of course, the Jets. Never go wrong relying or rooting for the Jets. Trust me, getting 5.5 from the Panthers, the Titans and the Cardinals over 52.5 points, and the Eagles and the Falcons over 48 points. So again, I will recap that once more at the very end of the podcast just so everybody gets them. But those are the official Betting Pros podcast 6 best bets of the week. I love it. Again, you can hear more. We're going to break down every game. We're going to break down props on the Betting Pros YouTube channel, youtube.com/bettingpros from 11 a.m. Eastern to 12 p.m. on that channel, me and Matt Peralt. All right, let's run through, Sean, all the spreads and just let me know, you have a lean on one side or is it a stay away for you? And again, this is coming out. This is Wednesday, so we can talk about the Thursday game. The spread on the Bucs-Cowboys game is now 8. Do you like either side on that game?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all in on the Bucs. Again, Super Bowl winner coming off the Super Bowl at home. Very good against the spread. I think it's like 5-1, 6-1. I got it when it opened at 6. I still like it at 8. Dak is not 100% healthy, and they got issues on their offensive line as well with Zach Martin out. Yeah. So give me the Bucs.
I mean, you talk about offensive line issues. That's an offensive line issue, right? Yeah. That's their best offensive lineman being out. And remember, La'el Collins is going to play, but he's not 100% either. So, that offensive line really takes a hit. I agree with you. I will take the Bucs -8. I lean that way anyway. But I will say that I do get a little worried, like it might be like party time, celebrating the Super Bowl, and then the Cowboys get a backdoor cover here. But
Yep.
I agree with you. That is where I would go. I still feel confident at 8. How about, again, we talked about the over-under. What about the Falcons laying 3 to your Eagles at home?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I liked it better when it was 3.5, which I think yesterday was 3.5. I still like it at 3.
I've got I've got a couple of 3.5s. There's Caesars. Caesars is still 3.5. There are a couple 3.5s out there, actually.
So if you can get those 3.5s, I think you do it. Again, I think this Eagles team is going to surprise some people. And again, our offensive line, defensive line have a chance to be top 5 both ends. So I'm taking the points with the Eagles.
All right, I am staying away. 3.5, you're right. I would be more intrigued by that. And again, I'm looking, the consensus line is 3. The overwhelming majority of books are at 3, but there are 3.5s out there for sure. So again, that's why it's always good just to check your sports book, make sure you get the best lines. I wouldn't mind the Eagles at plus 3.5, but otherwise I'm really not touching it. What about the Lions at home getting 7.5 from the 49ers?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those games that everyone is going to pick the 49ers in their survivor pool, and then that's why that reason alone, I like the Lions. The Jimmy G is a 7.5 point road favorite to me is just too crazy. I think I think you got to take the Lions in the points.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere near this because, even if it looks like the 49ers are going to run with it, I'm worried Dan Campbell's just going to run out there and smack them in the kneecaps or something like that, do something crazy. I think that you laid it out correctly, which is the value is actually on the Lions here at 7.5 because you have Jimmy Garoppolo as a starting quarterback on the road. There's just no way I'm going to dabble in it. Like I'm just staying completely away from it. But I do think that is where the value, the game everybody has been talking about for, weeks at this point. The only thing everybody wants to watch this weekend is, of course, the Texans hosting the Jaguars, laying 3 points. What are you doing with this, if anything?
Well, Tyrod Taylor as a starter, 24-21-1. The Jags were a 1-win team. Now you have a rookie quarterback and rookie head coach going on the road as a road division favorite. I think on principle alone, you have to take the Texans.
That is the correct answer. That's something that I say on the fantasy podcast a lot where they tease me. Yes, I agree with you. It's disgusting. But the value is very clearly on the Texans here. We have not seen very much from the Jaguars right now, and everything given the situation that suggests that they're going to be able to, have a big time performance here. I don't mind the over, by the way. Again, another thing where I was like under, and then I'm like, oh, what about all these overs? 44.5 points. That's pretty low. I do think both sides will be able to put up some points here, but yeah, you're right. Tyrod Taylor, he's fine. Brandon Cooks is going to get his. They have like 17,000 crappy running backs. They'll be able to move the ball. So we'll see. They did just trade Bradley Roby, but no big deal. We're not going to talk about that.
The Texans have some issues.
They have 1 or 2 issues. They will be the worst team in the league, but you know what? The Jaguars were the worst team in the league last year, and
that's a great example. That Jags Colts game, and I had the Jags, and the Lions game and the Texans game both kind of look like similar situations.
Yeah. Fun fact, by the way, that reminds me about the Colts, as we like the Seahawks. The Colts have not won an opener since 2013. So remember that.
I'm going to steal that nugget.
Do it. All right. The Chargers getting 1.5 in Washington. Who do you like?
Now, this game is, I think, quietly one of the better games on the board, and you could talk me into either side here pretty easily. I think early lean here would have to be the Washington football team just because they're at home and it's a crazy flight for a new coach. But, yeah, I mean, this should be a hell of a game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I thought about taking Washington +1 here as the home dog as one of my picks. I do like it. It's one of the spreads that I like a little bit more. Again, Washington is going to surprise some people. It came out a little earlier. Now it doesn't sound like Curtis Samuel necessarily is going to play. He was trending up, but sounds like a little bit. It doesn't do that much for me. I think Antonio Gibson's going to be a monster. I love Logan Thomas, of course, Terry McLaurin, and Fitzpatrick. There's always the chance of Fitzpatrick's and it goes terribly sideways.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Fitzpatrick game 1, this is where you're like, yeah, the Washington football team, they're going to win the division. And we actually had the one of the directors from WinBet, and they said their biggest MVP liability was Ryan Fitzpatrick, which I had to laugh at. I don't think Fitzpatrick lasts this long. Like, there's a reason he's been in this league for how many years, and he only has one winning season starting all 16 games. I think he eventually hits that Fitzmagic wall, and we'll see. Maybe Heineke can kind of carry them. But I think game 1 is probably his spot. So, yeah, lean in WFTs for sure.
And again, we didn't even harp on the fact that Washington has one of the better defenses in the league anyway, right? So,
Chase Young,
and again, the Chargers are changing their system. I know Herbert was great last year, but it was a very, kind of rookie-friendly offensive system. It's a little more complicated what they're doing right now. He could definitely struggle early. So for me, I think there is value on Washington here,
Yeah, and they didn't play any of their starters in the preseason. Now you got this crazy road trip. I think they could start a little slow.
Look at us. We're talking ourselves right into Washington.
Am I adding this to the card?
New best bet. Replaces the Seahawks. Absolutely. Bills laying 6.5 at home to the Steelers.
This is another one I've kind of been going back and forth on. The TJ Watt news to me is big. I was refreshing Twitter right before we got on the show here.
He did practice today, didn't he? I thought I saw that come across.
It seems like he's gonna play, but just the fact that it's a little up in the air scares me a little bit. I am high on the Bills overall this season, but I liked what I saw at a Big Ben. Slim down. I think, again, you want to talk about dark horse DFS plays that are super cheap. Pat Freiermuth, the Bills struggle with the tight end. I'm high on him this season, so I would take the Steelers in the points. I don't think they're that bad this year.
Yeah, by the way, you've mentioned DFS a couple of times. I will I'll tease everybody should just Google Sean Green and DFS, and you would like to take his advice. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, I am with you, but I think there is value on the Steelers. I'm not going near it. I'm just not, because I think the Bills could be absolutely monstrous right now. Sorry if you can hear that. That's my garage door, always opens during a podcast. I will take the Bills. I think the Bills could be explosive, but I will take the Steelers if I have to choose a side. I'm really staying away from it. How about the Vikings laying 3.5 to the Bengals in Cincinnati?
Yeah, again, this is one where it's like way too obvious, and it kind of scares you because why? In my mind, who's taking the Bengals there? I think the Bengals are getting a lot of kind of fantasy hype because they're expected to throw the ball a ton, and you have Joe Burrow paired up with Jamar Chase. Chase kind of had a down preseason. We'll see if that actually matters. To me, it seems like Joe Burrow doesn't trust his knee yet, and if Joe Burrow doesn't trust his knee, I'm not going to trust his knee. I'm going to take Kirk Cousins here. It's not in prime time. I think they get the job done.
There are a few threes out there, which I obviously like better for the push potential, such as points bet and stuff like that. But still, I agree with you. I will take the Vikings. I talked about in fantasy the whole year. I think it's going to be a little bit of a slow start here for Burrow as he just gets more mentally acclimated to the NFL again after the injury. I think Jamar Chase, after taking a year off from football, is going to get off to a little bit of a slow start. So I could see the Vikings winning handily here. So I lean Vikings plus minus 3.5. As well, we already talked about the Jets Panthers. You love that bet. You fully support it. So let's go to the Saints the Packers laying 4.5 to the Saints in New Orleans. It's not in New Orleans. It's going to be in Florida, but obviously it's a home game for the Saints. So Packers laying 4.
Yeah, man, this one is on my list of like really been hemming and hawing as far as figuring out the best angle. Again, Aaron Rodgers has struggled in Florida, and that's kind of why the reason, according to reports, that's why the Saints picked it, is because he hasn't played well down in Florida. And early in September, if there is someone that has experience playing in that Florida heat in September, it's a guy like Jameis Winston. But again, then you have the Saints dome team going outside, and then are you really going to take Jameis over Aaron Rodgers? That feels a bit crazy as well. I think this could be my lean would be the over here on this one, but I gun to my head, I would just take the points.
Yeah, I am probably just staying away from it. Like I can easily make the case for the Packers in this game because I think that you get out of the Superdome that's a pretty big move, like there to go, even if it's Florida, where he purportedly struggles. The over under, by the way, consensus is 50 points. So I'm staying away from it. But if I had to go one way, I'd probably go the other way, and I'd probably go with the favorite, which is weird for us since you love all the favorites. All right, let's get to the next game, and that is we did that one. Sorry, how about the Broncos laying 3 to the Giants in New Jersey?
Ooh, yeah. And again, this one I've been kind of keeping an eye on the injury news / arrest news with Bradley Chubb, who, it seemed on Tuesday he was going to play, him and Fant, and now it seems like he's closer to not playing, but Fant is still going to play. To me, the matchup that I just can't unsee or unthink about is the Broncos pass rush against the Giants. I mean, I'm not high on Daniel Jones or their offensive line. I mean, their offensive line was really bad last year. It feels like they didn't do anything to seriously address it. He turns the ball over all the time, and you have Bridgewater on the other side who plays a really clean game, so I'll take the Broncos.
Absolutely correct. I completely agree with you. I think the Giants are going to be in big trouble in this game, and especially Saquon isn't 100%. Galladay is not 100%. That offensive line is terrible. And by the way, the consensus line is 3. That's where it is at most books. BetMGM and FanDuel, it's -2.5. So get all over that. Yeah, get all over that if you're in there. Browns visiting the Chiefs. The Chiefs are 6-point favorites. What do you think?
Yeah, this one, again, kind of keeping it chalky. I know everyone's high on the Browns, think they can make a run, but Andy Reid, opening day, yes, Andy Reid. I think he's 19-0, last 19 games straight up in September. You got Patrick Mahomes not laying more than double digits. And big picture, I do think the Chiefs kind of fixed their offensive line, which was a huge issue for them. They got some work in the preseason. He played his starters. I think they're looking pretty good. And, the Browns defense is solid and obviously high in Myles Garrett and some of the other guys they got. But I think this is a statement game for the Chiefs after that Super Bowl loss.
Entirely with you. And I like the Browns this year a lot. I'm totally buying them, absolutely. But you're going to give me Patrick Mahomes in this game after that Super Bowl with Andy Reid in September at under a touchdown. I'm definitely taking it. In fact, I really should have pivoted to that game, frankly, after but it's fine. I'll take a bunch of over-unders. All right. Rams at home laying 7.5 to the Bears.
Yeah, I'm taking the points here. I know people are worried about the Bears, their offensive line. I still think fantasy-wise, I do like David Montgomery. I think he keeps them in the game enough. And again, it's, Stafford, new system, new head coach. Maybe there's a couple things they got to work out there. You could apply the same thing to the Bears, but it's week 1, Sunday Night Football, national TV. I think there's going to be a ton of Bears fans there. So I think they get up for this game enough to keep it within 7.
Yeah, I'm on the other side. I think if I have to go, I fear for Andy Dalton and what things are going to look like in
my head. It's Justin Fields' team.
I get it. I get it.
You're right. Andy Dalton in prime time, probably a good reason to fade. The number just seems a hair high.
I get it. The number is correct, I think, because it is something. You're over a touchdown is really tough. But for me, I love Matthew Stafford. I'm very high in the Rams, as most people are this year. I love that defense. I fear for Andy Dalton. So I'm willing to bite the bullet a little bit and lay the points. Final game. The Raiders getting 4.5 from the Ravens in Las Vegas.
Yeah, this is another one. It's hard to go against a Monday night home dog opening up the stadium. So I'm really going back and forth here on this one. Yeah. My lean would be right now of Raiders, but I could change my mind by Monday. This one's tough because the Baltimore offense has had so many issues, injuries, everything. But then you're really going to back this Raiders team, which has had a weird offseason as well. All things being equal, I think you should take a Monday Night Football home dog at 4.5. But I'm not a huge Gruden or Raiders fan.
Yeah, I'm staying away. But if forced to go one way, I actually would go with the Raiders because I think that place is going to be nuts. Yes. And I don't think that everybody else is ready for it. Also, frankly, I mean, the Ravens get to spend a couple days in Vegas, right? Leading up to it whenever they travel out there. That might mess with you a little bit.
Definitely.
Yeah, right? All right. So we've got a couple of things. let's just very briefly again recap the official plays. You've got the Seahawks laying 2.5 against the Colts, the Titans laying 3 to the Cardinals, and the Pats laying 3 to the Dolphins. I am taking the Cardinals and the Titans over 52.5, the Falcons and the Eagles over 48, and the Jets laying 5.5 to the Panthers. If you want to sub out one of my over-unders because you're like, I don't accept over-unders as a pick, that's fine. My other one would be the Chiefs laying 6 to the Browns. I could also be convinced to take the Washington football team laying 1 to the Chargers. Sean, this was great. I loved kicking off. I loved it. Remind everybody where they can find all of you and your work and all the good stuff.
Oh, yeah. Sports Gambling Podcast. We actually just, our network, SGPN, we launched an app. So that's the easiest way to get all our picks, podcasts. It's all for free. We're doing a contest. It's free to enter. You have a chance to win $100,000 NFL Week 1. You have to pick a bunch of things correct. So it's a long shot, but again, it's free. The podcast's free. The picks are free. So SGPN in the App Store, Google Play Store. Give us a follow on Twitter at Gambling Podcast. And let it ride. Let's go, baby. Week 1. It feels like going back to school. If school was being a degenerate sports gambler.
It is. And especially after last year where it was just this weird kind of thing cloud. That was, now it's all gravy. It's all wonderful. All right, I really appreciate you coming on. And you guys, by the way, you should be following Sean. You should be following the Sports Gambling Network and podcast. They're hilarious, by the way. It's not only just entertaining, they give great advice. So really appreciate you coming on. We will have you back for sure. We will exchange picks beforehand so that we don't have to worry about me randomly going somewhere else.
And I'm gonna put in a parlay of our official 5. So we'll see. Maybe I come back and we'll see how that goes.
I'm in totally. All right. So again, we will be back here on Monday, giving us an early look in the lines. In the meantime, enjoy your Week 1 football, everybody, and we will catch you next week.